do you believe Rodgers can still be a starting quarterback on a playoff team?
I do. I don't want to pretend that Aaron's been unbelievable this year. I think Aaron's had moments where he's played well. I think Aaron has had moments when he hasn't played up to the expectation level. I think there's been a lot of variables that have been attached to that. I think this is a football team in New York that's 3-7. 4 of those losses are by single digits. 3 of those losses are by a field goal. So while 3-7, you are what your records say you are. They've been whooped 2 or 3 games as well. They haven't been at least blown out in games. And I think that the performance of the team, if you had a kick there, a kick here, a kick there, a turnover there, I think it would be different. I think there's 2 things that, okay, one, I think he plays next year because I don't believe an all-time great goes out like this. I honestly, in my gut, don't. I think the second part is if he plays, I don't think it's a done deal that it's in New York because of the change that can happen. Does Aaron want to be there? More than likely the new people want him. So I don't know if it's a done deal that it's in New York. And then 3, I do believe after watching this season, if he does play next year, it will have to be with a much more improved offensive line. That's probably been the number one reason why his play has been kind of as sporadic as it's been. But I think he plays, yes.
Mina?
As far as all-time greats not going out on top, it happens more often than not, Dan, that they don't end the careers the way they like to. I think what we've learned from this season of Rodgers is that Tom Brady, the level of play we saw from him at his age, the situation, everything around him, that was more the exception than the rule, Stephen A. More often than not, when players play, as long as Rodgers is, into their 40s, as he would be if he stuck around next year, their play does fall off, and that is what we are seeing from him. So just to talk about Rodgers' play, separate from the Jets, there are still moments where he still makes those upper quartile, percentile throws that we associate with him. But I also see a quarterback who is different under pressure from how he was earlier in his career, different when he has to get to his second read. The numbers reflect that. So for him to play on a contender, it would have to be a dream situation. Like if you put Rodgers on Detroit, yeah, I'd say, sure, they're a playoff team. But more likely than not, we are talking about the Jets. And Dan, you talked about them having close losses. What jumps out to me watching them right now, other than the offense, which looks largely the same as it did at the beginning of the year, before Robert Saleh was fired, Stephen A., they held opposing quarterbacks to the lowest QBR in football. Since then, and now we've got quite a few weeks, 31st. So they went from being arguably the best pass defense in the NFL to the bottom of the league. So again, to go back to the initial question, this isn't a good football team anymore. We have to accept that when we're looking at what's realistic for Aaron Rodgers.
That's a great point, Mina.
Career low passer rating, 86.8. Has not thrown for 300 yards in a game since December of 2021. I mean, something along those lines. You got to be kidding me.
It's a long time. At
some point in time, I would say this. You know me. I mean, everybody knows how I felt about Aaron Rodgers. He's a bad man. That was me. That was me. And he's been bad. And do I believe it can last? No. Do I believe it will last? No. Do I believe he's better than this? Yes. Do I believe he can start for a contending team? Yes. But understand what it would take. It would take Aaron Rodgers recognizing I need help, and I'm not talking about on the actual field of play. I need coaches. I need to be willing to listen. I need to get away from, I got to be that dude. I got to be in control. My voice needs to be heard. You know, the kind of things that we were hearing he was feeling in his last years in Green Bay. That's over now. That's over now because they gave you the keys to the throne. They gave you the keys to the palace, rather. And they've stunk up the joint since that has happened. They are worse this year than they were last year with Zach Wilson and others as their quarterback. Think about that for a second. They are worse. And so for me, when you consider the changes, like, for example, Woody Johnson, you can't convince anybody that Woody Johnson just rolled up in there and fired Robert Saleh without talking with Aaron Rodgers. Nobody believes that. Nobody's trying to hear that. You had nothing to do with it? You had nothing to say? Really? Nothing? Nobody, even if it is true, nobody's going to believe it. No. And so because of that, it's just one of those situations where I would say to you, can Aaron Rodgers still be a quarterback for a playoff team? Yes, if you're committed to being the quarterback and not trying to be everything else.
But Dan, just to jump in, what team is going to look at this season and everything you described and say, yeah, we want that. We're going to bring that into organization. Just if there was a hypothetical team out there.
It depends on the level of desperation. There's always somebody desperate. I'm not saying he's going to have his pick of the litter or anything like that like he would have years ago, but there's always someone desperate enough to take a chance.
Never make decisions when you're feeling desperate. Carry on, Dan.
Put that on a T-shirt. You and Shannon be coming up with these one-liners. I wanted to touch on something that you intimated, Stephen A., and I agree with it, when you said he needs help when it comes to the coaching. I'll be very clear, and I think Mina's going to agree with me on this. If he plays next year, it can't be in this offensive system, okay? The offensive system that he is a part of right now, and in many ways the one that he was a part of in Green Bay that Mike McCarthy runs in Dallas,
Yeah.
you cannot win a Super Bowl in the NFL in this time running that offense. So if he plays again, and for him to play better, it will have to be in a significantly different offensive scheme to allow him to play better.
This is the offense he wants, Dan. You know that. This is the Aaron Rodgers offense.
I agree. But that's why
Yeah.
I was saying, to Stephen A.'s point,
Yeah, I hear you.
But
he's
what,
gonna
you
have
need to save him from himself, essentially?
he's going to have to be willing to sit there and go, okay, I'll learn a new offensive system that helps me and others play better, because the one that I have run forever and the one that I ran this year and again in Dallas, it's not going to win a Super Bowl in 2025.